Earlier on, I sat down with Julia Cannon. We had a candid discussion about life, Dolores's new book that has just been released, her experience of her mother passing away, her personal story, and how she dealt with that of losing her mother, a friend, and of course, who we've come to love as Dolores Cannon. You didn't get time to grieve at that time
Not
where
at all.
most people
No.
just get to just go through the grieving process because you were trying to hold on to everything and keep it all going. And I think
Mhm.
that's a tremendous story of survival, of keeping something alive. I just
You're gonna
think
make me
there's
cry because
so
it's
much
it's
in
hitting
that
that.
for
Yeah, it's
people
hitting that.
to because I even spoke to Blair. As you know, I had a few
Mhm.
interviews with Blair, and
Right.
he said something similar that um, your mum was so hands on with everything. She did everything. I mean, I know you worked with her, but
Mhm.
when she went, I guess like it was hard because she was editing the books and publishing the books and running the conferences and all of these things, and then suddenly she's not there, and then it's like, oh well, we got to keep it going.
Yeah, and so the biggest part, I mean, we were doing everything. At that time, I didn't realize her, you know, we were doing everything together, and I knew that she had a specific part. I knew that there's things that only she could do. But it was really felt when she left because there was such a hole. And like I said, like then I was trying to pick up and like, oh my gosh, what I it was like I lost. I'm sure it's how married couples feel when they lose their partner. It's like it was such a hole.
Mm, mm.
And just a
That's a good
void.
analogy, actually, because I think the dynamic that you had. I mean, I get, correct me if I'm wrong, a best friend
Mhm,
relationship, and then work partners. You were very much
mhm,
partnered in what you did, and then you fed off. Like she had qualities you didn't have,
mhm.
and you had qualities she didn't have, and then the two differences coming together. And sometimes you're going to fight inevitably with that, but
We
other
were too
times there's going to be
strong.
great synergy between the
Yeah,
two of you.
absolutely. We fed off each other very well. She she had her role in life. I had a very specific role with her. And then whenever she left, it was like, now what do I do? Who am I? Who
Mm,
am I a role for? It was like now it was pushed out in front all of a sudden, and I didn't know what to do with it. It was like I was being prepped,
yeah,
but not. And you don't know until you get into that position that okay, now you're out here. Now it's on you. The spotlight's on you. And oh my gosh, what do I do now? How do I even? It was
and it's
it's
and
really
then you've got to
that's when I
kind of
realized that I'd been hiding behind her. It's like I felt like I'd been hiding behind her skirts. That's weird that I said that just now, but it's more like I was definitely under the comfort of her skirts.
yeah,
I was there with her, and then now that wasn't there. I was just like sort of thrust out in front
yeah,
and got to fill her shoes, and that was the hardest part was the expectation to fill her shoes.
yeah. And I guess, that's an ongoing process, isn't it? Because I guess, I mean, we all know she's more popular than she's ever been.
Yes.
And, I mean, I've learned that from experience because I share so much of her content. And there's no one else I've really ever shared before that has the same effect on people. And that's where I know, even to today, so many people are finding her. I get messages all the time. I've just found her,
Yes.
just bought the books.
Mhm.
I've just watched my first video. And so people are only now finding the information. And
Yes. And then they're very upset when they find out that she passed.
yeah, well, that was
Just
my
discovered you.
experience. That was my experience because I was watching an online video of someone I followed, and he mentioned her and her books, and so I started to look into it, and I think I did a Wikipedia search or something, and then I saw it. My heart sank when I saw it that she had passed
Mhm,
on. It was a bit
mhm.
of a shock because
Yeah,
I hadn't heard of her at that stage, and this was maybe 5 years ago or so. But I think people have that same reaction when they
they
hear.
do. They do. I mean, weekly, almost daily, we get calls.
Mm,
And like you're saying, people, I just found her. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm home. I
yeah.
thank you so much. And can I have a session with her?
Yeah.
Like,
I've got the same thing. People send me that I share some of her videos, her reels, and they say, I want to book an appointment with her. I'm just like, oh, sorry. And then they're so upset when you respond
very,
back and she's part,
very upset, very upset. And then
yeah.
they're going through their grieving process.
Mm, mm.
They they
And I
just discovered
suppose
it.
as well, it, because I've seen so many of her videos because I
Mhm.
edit them, and so I almost know things word for word now. And I know she spoke a lot about living to, she said, I'll be around to 100, sort of
Mhm.
writing books.
Mhm.
It must have been a shock because she certainly didn't give the impression that she was going to go
No,
anywhere at the time.
no, no, she had no idea. And I was, that's why I tell restaurant, I was convinced. She had me convinced. And if I was convinced, I mean, she had no idea. That was not on her radar. She was planning to be here forever. And,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought she was going to be here forever. And when it all started happening, I mean, it happened very quickly. But and I was having talks with her, and Blair was really, it was interesting because, it's like we're trying to figure out what's going on. And Blair tapped in and he said, well, she's on the other side because she was asleep a lot. And she's on the other side. She's meeting with her counsel, trying to decide whether to stay or to go.
Right.
So it was something that was all on that side. And then when I went, I was over there every day with her. And when she, woke up and everything, we were talking, and she says, why do you, this is early on, because we were always doing it. Why do you think this happened? Why do you see, we're always
Yeah.
trying to understand the
Yeah.
more behind it. What's going on? What do you think this is going on? And I said, well, Blair says this. And she's like, well, that makes sense. Okay. And then she went back to sleep. Okay. So she was conferring a lot with her counsel.
Yeah. That's great getting that message. And Blair's wonderful, as you know. I mean,
Right.
I've actually had I don't know if I told you, I had a reading. He just offered it to me one day. He's like,
Oh,
do you
cool.
want to speak to Tabash? And I said, oh, okay. And your mother was right. I mean, he is the real deal. There's things he couldn't have known,
Yeah.
personal things, and just he taps right in there.
Yes. Yeah. He's very cool. I remember when she met him first time and she came back from New Zealand, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you've got to contact him," because I was going through some issues and everything. She's like, "Contact him. He's the real thing." So we've been friends, lifelong friends ever since.
Well, and I remember you said in the previous time we spoke, even when you were young, she used to be able to read palms, right? And you
Yeah.
went to a particular fair or something it was, and she would be able to pick the fakes. So she had a good knack, didn't she, for weeding
Yeah.
out the ones that weren't genuine and the ones that were.
That's a good way of putting that. I hadn't thought of that all, and that's a really nice ability, and
Yeah.
we're getting that ability now to be able to see through people. But yeah, you're right. Well, one, because she knew about the genre, she knew what was
Mm.
really going on here, and because it was really funny. One time it wasn't at a fair, but we were in like one of the southern towns, and we were just walking through, and there was a shop woman, palm reading,
Yeah,
everything. She's
yeah,
like, "Oh,
that's right.
let's go do it." And so we were in there getting our palms read, and then she turned around. She goes, "Okay, let me read yours now." And she read the woman's, and the woman was just, jaw on the floor, and
Wow. Wow. So
so
she
I
she
don't, yeah, I
had
don't
a
think she
gift.
was real impressed with her.
Well, it's interesting because she always said, I'm not a psychic. I'm
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
reporter. I'm an investigator. But obviously, she did have very strong intuition.
Yes, I agree. Now I think she would say that just to keep herself objective. She wanted to
Mm,
always be objective. And because early on in her work, I mean, when she started working with the ETs, and they were like, we can come through you. We can just give you the information directly. And she was like, no, I prefer this objectivity. I want to receive the information, and so I can look at it in an open manner and put it out there. And I think she knew at that point, if it comes through you, you have sometimes an attachment to it. You know, definitely that filter, your conscious mind is filtering it, and it can slant it. It can do things with that information. So she was very much always wanting to be that reporter,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
stay objective. Know what you know as you get older, and not to call her elderly. Mom was never elderly.
No.
So, but you know things. And so, and you don't put up with stuff, and you call it the way it is. And that's what, where she definitely, yeah, she was there. And it's like, yeah, I get it now. Yeah, the fools are the young ones that think they know everything.
Yeah. It's
And
such a
that's
good,
also, well, I just
yeah.
think that's also probably why she could spot, where she was able to understand what the conscious mind was doing in that, because this was all new. There was this really new stuff in the beginning as she's developing QHHT and understanding, okay, I'm working with this. I've got this part, and then I've got this part, and I've got this part. It's like, man, there's a lot of parts in there to this person. And she was able to detect when that conscious mind was coming in trying to blow smoke, like it knew everything, and she was able to, no, 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 no. So she was able to call it for its crap right there. It was like,
Yeah.
and that takes experience, that takes life knowledge, to
Yeah.
do that. And like I said, she was good. I think she was good at pegging things and knowing when
Yeah.
something was legit or not.
What was it like when you lost your father? Because I know that would have been quite a few years ago.
Hmm. Yes.
And obviously he had his accident, and he was around quite some time afterwards.
Yeah.
Was that a sort of a sudden thing? And how did the family in general cope with when he passed?
Yeah, it was, oh God, this is, now I'm gonna get emotional.
I know.
Okay.
I'm sorry to put it on. It's just coming out.
Um, we knew, you never know exactly when, but he was on the decline. He had cancer in different places, and it just kept coming back. And it was like, and this is before we knew what all of that meant. We didn't
Right.
understand those things yet. And now I'm like, oh, we had some inkling, because I remember Mom talking to him, and it's like, you're she knew it was about anger and stuff. And he had a lot happened to him. He lost his life. When he had that accident, his life was gone. He had to completely recreate himself. And he went through so much. He didn't get to have rehabilitation like they do now. He didn't have any. There was nothing.
Mm.
Nothing. He just was on his own to try to work it out. He did so good. I mean, this man, he's my hero. And so that's why I'm going to get emotional, because he was
Yeah.
so, I'm always amazed at what he did with
Mm.
what happened, inside. I mean, well, he wasn't always inside. He was angry, and he'd take it out on the one that you love the most, and so that's where
That's
they had some issues there. But she understood that much. It was about, his life completely changing, his role completely changing, everything in his life changing. So that created a lot of anger. So we knew that. But it was just that it was like one thing would get corrected, and then cancer would come back in another area, and then it would come back in another. And I remember on the last one of the last is like when they discovered it again, because he was like, oh, he was so excited, okay, we're here. Then they discovered some more. That was, I was alone with my father, and he cried, and I was just like, oh my gosh. I think he knew at that point,
yeah.
this is it. I can't keep fighting this fight, And so it took a while, and he was doing all these natural things to reverse it. But
Yeah.
there was a deep underlying issue that was going on there. And
Mm. I mean, I can
so,
imagine how difficult what he went through. I would
mhm,
be angry too. I mean,
mhm,
just as you said, his life in so many ways was taken from him.
right.
Did you ever get through either your mum's work or your own investigation answers to why you think that accident occurred?
um we've had, that's interesting. Mom she did some things on her own where she got some answers for herself. I have some thoughts. These are just purely just by how it looked and by how he was. I feel like, he had at that time, and I don't remember what was going on at that time of that accident, but I mean, we were just a regular family living in it, so it wasn't like any, but it was a major crux point, I guess.
Mm.
Um, he was about, that's interesting you're asking me this because I saw this last night. I was hearing me talking about this. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, he was about to re-enlist. I mean, he was going to re-up another term. He was
Ah,
ready. He was at his 20 years, and they were like, okay, you can retire, or what are you going to do? You can re-up. And he loved the Navy. He just loved his military time. That was his identity. He was, it's all that. And he had this choice, and he decided he was going to go ahead and re-up. There was going to be another three
ah.
years. And that's when
And
he
as
had the
we know,
accident.
the higher self will when
And
we
he
don't get
said,
the
no,
message, sometimes it's an
yeah,
accident, sometimes it's
that's
illness.
like, yeah, you got to stop that way. And I've seen that it's like, this path is closed. And I mean, it's like, he hit it head
Mm,
on. This path is closed. And interestingly, the accident was on his way to work.
mm.
In hindsight, we can look at all those things.
Exactly. And I
Another
think
thing,
is
I just feel like he needed to be around. I feel like it was a point that it was a decision for him to make. Am I going to stay? Am I going to go? It was another one of those.
mm,
I don't know. I just don't know. But anyway, it was just his life had to take a different path.
yeah,
This was where, I guess this other had to get in motion. He had started the work of the hypnosis, and they had gotten, he'd been doing that work, and mom was helping him, so she knew a lot about it. They had that client. I mean, this was right after they had just finished that client that the Five Lives
yeah,
book is
the
written
five out,
about. So
yeah.
they had just finished that, and then all that work, and then he had the accident. So it was like this was started.
Wow.
Now we got to get you in a different place so that you can do the whatever. I don't
Mm,
know. I don't know if, because their thought, oh, I'm thinking about things I'd never thought of before. When they got married, mom and dad got married, they had planned that they went on their honeymoon to right up here to Branson. Okay. It was just, and there was a cave there. It was not, now it's a great big theme park and everything, but it was just a cave, and they went down into it and met with the person that had excavated it. It was just interesting honeymoon. But anyway, they're like, whenever we retire, let's move back to this area. Let's come back here. We love it. Well, that's where we are. We're here. It,
that's
it took them a while to realize that that's where we are. I think they kind of forgot that until we had some friends come up and visit, and we went to this theme park in Branson. And when she was there and we're going to this cave, she's like, oh my gosh, this is where I went on my
yeah,
honeymoon. And this
yeah,
is where we
wow,
said we're going to come back here when we retire. We're going to move back here. Had
wow.
not, and it was an interesting chain of events that even got us up here. So I'm wondering now if he would have just retired, and we would have retired with his original plan, then maybe, I don't know, but things go the way they go. And
Yeah. Well, yeah, even if you're saying that, I'm thinking there's a whole series of things. I mean, I'm sure because I guess in a lot of ways your mum was, the primary carer for him,
yeah,
and she probably had a lot more to do than, your average wife in that circumstance. There would have been some resilience developed. There would have been so
yeah,
much that she would have
mhm,
gained from that enormous responsibility. And I know you've got this background yourself in nursing, and you've drawn upon a lot of that knowledge and compassion and all of those things to bring into your work now. Do you
mhm.
think it's the same, or was the same with her, where it really built up a lot of strength in her to really do what
Yes,
she did in the final
yeah,
days? Yeah.
yeah. And I do remember her getting information like that from something. Is
Right.
that built the strength that she needed to do what she had to do. If he would have not had the accident, she would have stayed the wife, and being in the, that was, you have to remember where they came from. This is the time where the man was the breadwinner, he was the head of the household, and then you had the wife who was the supporter, and that was their roles. That's exactly how they did. And when he had that accident, she had to be equal, and that was another part that was very hard for him. And that's what I meant by his role. His role was
Yeah.
completely changed,
Yeah.
and he had a hard time with that. I mean, it was forced. This was a forced shift, and then as she started developing these things and going out and doing things, he was very proud of her, but he had a hard wait time of showing her
Mm.
that. He would tell friends, but he had a hard time telling her.
Yeah.
So that was some of that role. We
Yeah.
get stuck in those roles sometimes, and
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. I was thrust out of my role and thrust into this. And I remember how much I was kicking and screaming. And it took me quite a while before I finally accepted that, you know what, this is actually a good thing. This is okay.
Mm.
So I mean, and I hear it all the time. And I'll share my story a little bit. And people talk about that's, they go through that. It's the times of what the trying times, the times of fire, whatever, you go through things like that and you learn so
Yeah.
much. They're huge time. I guess we can call it a learning field. Just huge amounts of learning.
They always say that you grow during times of adversity, not
Yeah.
too much during the good times.
Mhm.
I think we've
Yeah,
all learnt
hopefully
that
we can
over.
enjoy
Yeah.
during the good
Well, we just don't
time.
tend to get the lessons when it's easy, do we? We're too busy having fun, enjoying. And then you get a really
Maybe.
hard lesson and it's, oh, mm,
Mhm. Maybe now, as we're becoming more aware and the veils are thinning more, maybe we can choose to learn. I mean, every time I go through a hard one, I'm like, look, can if I promise to listen, if I promise to learn, well, you kind of soften it a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's like, and this is us. This is us teaching us. It's our higher selves. It's what we came in planned to do. And if we're not on our path, then we have put in this mechanism to get us there. It's like, okay, I mean, we've asked our higher selves, our guides, whatever. It's like, if I'm off course, get me back on course, however you have to do it.
mhm.
To
Yeah.
see, with no victims, we're not the ones. We asked for it, we planned it. We know we have a course that we want to take.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. So do you get it? Obviously, the baton had been passed to you. It came unexpectedly. You thought you had much longer than you did, but
mhm,
then it's given over to you. Did you get a sense of what was next? And I know so many things have happened since, that it's exploded, as we were saying before, in growth. There's more students than there's ever been, and you're running all of that, and you're still out there doing all of that, and you're doing interviews like this and so many other things, and obviously CEO of the company. Do you get a sense of what is next? Because I know she talked about a university, and I remember, like, even Suzanne's husband had got the plans for that. um was
yeah.
that something that you sort of forgot about when she passed, or is it something you think about to this day?
I had to go on the back burner. It was
Yeah.
very much in its embryonic stage. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't even
Yeah.
infancy, it was embryonic. It was
Yeah.
very beginning of, wouldn't this be cool?
Yeah.
And we had gotten those plans. Yeah, we had gotten that far, and it was like, oh my gosh, look what we can do. But then she passed, and so it was like, okay, I I have no brain capacity to even think about this.
Yeah.
It had to go on a back burner because I had to keep this other going. This was
And
that was
that's
just beginning. It can hold for a minute. And so we got everything else going. Then I said, I'll know when it's time to do something over there. And I would get little flickers and I'd start kind of looking at it again. But many times it's had to go back on the back burner. It's like it would start and then it would stop. I got directions as far as a building. It's that's going to be a while. I got very clear direction to do things online,
yeah.
get that going, then that could create what was needed to build the building if we really
Yeah.
wanted to have that
Want to
down the
do,
road.
yeah. And I
Um,
suppose that makes so much sense, particularly in the last couple of years, because predominantly most businesses have moved
yes.
online in some capacity.
Mhm.
And even, doing in-person events, I mean, they're a lot more expensive than they used to be, because I'm planning one at the moment and I know what it's like. And it is actually easy to get a lot of people from all over the world into an online
Mhm.
forum, opposed to, in a particular location, or having people
Yeah.
travel in a location. So you can reach so many more people when you
You
do
can
it that way.
yeah, you can, and that's why with our QHHT, we kept wanting to do we felt like we wanted to do a level 2 online. We kept thinking maybe that's possible. At first I thought no, it's impossible because
Yeah.
of the things that we have it in there. It needs to be in person.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, maybe we can. And then when, 2020, it was like, oh shoot, we're gonna have to do something. We have to shift. And so we figured out a way to make it all work, and that it's even better now. That I feel like it's better than our live course because there's so much in it. You
Yeah.
can't keep people's attention that
Yeah.
long in a live setting. It's
That's
really difficult.
yeah.
I mean, these are marathon. I don't know if you went to a live class. They were marathons.
No, I did. I actually did the online.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so I thought it worked really well. I mean, obviously I did level one, and that was online. It was great. And it just felt really natural, sort of moving into doing it the same way.
Yeah, and it's the only thing is the people, they want that camaraderie. So
Mm.
so they're still asking for that, and that's where now we're doing like reunions. We'll start doing retreats, things like that, just to bring everybody together
Together.
and give
Yeah.
them the space that they need and want to maybe share sessions and stuff like that, and then answer
Yeah.
some
Great
questions.
idea.
So we picked out the things that they really want. They keep saying, I want a live class, I want a live class. But it's like when you look at what they really want, it's I want to get with
The
other people,
connection.
practice
Yeah.
sessions, and then get some questions answered.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so we're taking those pieces and putting those into live events, and
Yeah.
that
Great.
we can do. But I don't feel like it. I can't, in good conscience, do a live class because our online because there's so much material in there. It just I know you're not going to retain it.
Yeah. It's such a big undertaking. I mean, I think people underestimate just what your mother built. I mean,
Mhm.
it was, obviously the method itself, and then the books, and even her day to day. I remember her talking about this. She would have a session during the day, and then at
Mhm.
night she would stay up till like 2 or 3 a.m. and write.
Yeah,
And she would be
exactly.
traveling maybe at the same time. So she'd see a client while
Mhm.
she was doing a conference, and then
Mhm.
she would write at night. Wow, where did the energy, hey?
We're
Mad.
always saying, yeah, it was the Energizer Bunny. I mean, she had those batteries and they're always charged. I mean, and I didn't, I mean, I saw that and everything. Like I said, I didn't appreciate all of it until after she passed, and there was such a hole. And then I'm trying to do these things, take them up, and I'm like, and I'm not taking up everything, and I'm having a hard time.
Yeah,
So I'm
I
like, how
yeah,
did you do it? I don't know.
and you don't get much sleep. I've gone through that over the last couple of weeks as my work load has increased, and I go, wow, I'm a young man. How did
Mhm.
Dolores do it at her age? But she was doing more than I am. So, but isn't it true that when you're doing what you're supposed to do,
Yeah,
you don't get sick so much, and you have a lot of energy, maybe where, like you said, it
yeah.
doesn't make even any sense.
Well, it's not work. You don't, it's not work. It's just, it's your, it's like a mission. I mean, this took on a mission feeling. I remember the last couple of years, I could see my role with her shifting. And,
Yeah.
and at first I realized, oh, we have a contract here. I remember in one of the talks or something she was doing, maybe it was a class or something, talking about the contracts. It's like, oh, yeah, definitely have a contract. We, want to work together, but we're also working through a lot of stuff here. And that's why we're together all the time. Because that was another thing. If you're with your parent a lot, like then there's karma still going on there. And I kept hearing that in
Yes.
every
I
class, and everyone
remember
like,
that. I remember that. Yeah, if you're still kind of very close, I think she said that actually, if you're still
yeah,
really
hmm,
close with a parent
yeah,
later in life, there's a
yes,
karmic relationship there.
yes. And I'm like, okay, can we get it done? I'm in my thing is like, I want to do whatever, I don't know. It just, now it feels kind of weird. I want to do my thing, but I'm still here. I'm a support person, but you struggle, this is where we are. And then when she's gone, I'm like, I want you back. Where did you go? So, um, it's a lot
Yeah.
of, so there's some of that goes on in there,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, if you're still with them, there's stuff going on. But I definitely felt it shift. In like the last couple of years, it shifted from, we have a contract together. It shifted to, this is a mission. It became a mission feel, that we were both on, and so that was interesting.
Mm.
I don't have confirmation. I don't know anything about it. I just know how it felt. It
Yeah.
shifted. So somewhere in there, that karmic thing shifted, and now we're doing this together. And that's what it meant. I meant, it's like we were a team. We
Mm.
were a team, and that was tough. That was really tough when
Mm.
that person, and she was gone. Although she was still there, I do classes, and I could feel her there. She was there. We're always wanting her to do interviews. Before it was on the telephone, she would do that,
Yeah,
and then
that's
became
yeah.
on this. She did not like it. She didn't like how she looked. I totally relate
Oh,
right now. Okay, she didn't
really?
like how she looked on Skype, and it was all done by Skype. And it was funny. I saw something not just a few days ago, where she was on a video and she was introducing somebody. And she goes, and the speaker had to be. We brought the speaker into the conference via Skype, and she's like, I don't know if you people are familiar with Skype or not. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's just so funny, but that was her. It was so new to her. She
Yeah.
thought nobody else knew about it. This was revolutionary, so I'll give you an idea. But she hated the internet. She hated these technical things, the technology. She did not like them.
Mm.
Um, and but yeah, but look here.
Well, you even
Now
had to convince her to go digital for the tape recorder. I think she was happy with her old, big. What do
she
you
would have
what
stayed with the reel to reel if she
the
could,
reel to
probably.
reel? She would have stayed with us. She could have cut the tapes.
But she had her little cassette tapes, and it took the longest time to convince her. I mean, this was long after those were phased out, and she was still doing them. And finally, and I could, telling her, Mom, people don't have these, though. They don't have tape recorders anymore. Oh, that's silly. They can
Yeah,
get one. That's
yeah.
easy. And it was like, that's not, no, it's not. It's not okay. It's not okay. Until finally one person, they called her and they're like, I'm not, they had questions about their session. She's like, well, did you listen to your recording? No, I don't have anything to play it on. I was like, then it sunk. And it's
It's
like,
like,
oh, it's
yeah,
like, yeah, they don't do that anymore, Mom.
yeah. The world's changed so quickly, even since she's passed, and it presents so much unique opportunity, I think, because as we are essentially, social media or anything is having a voice, right? And because it's changing so quickly, the likes of these videos, that who knew at the time that years later that they would be going viral on TikTok and viral on it now Facebook, because Facebook are
Mhm.
doing reels. Maybe at the time not many people watched it, but now there's millions of people watching it.
Exactly.
It's
No, that
extraordinary.
was nowhere in our radar.
Yeah.
Understanding. No, nowhere.
And because I mean, I know, because I've seen all the numbers, and then YouTube's another thing. I mean, multiple millions of people have
It's
seen
amazing.
all of these interviews that she's done. The Kevin Moore, the radio show that you guys did together with Kevin Moore,
Yes.
and then the TV show. I think she did a few of those, or a few radio interviews, and then she did like an online one.
Mhm.
And then she had her own radio show as well. Did you have that just set up at the house when she was doing the radio show, the call-in show, or the
Yeah, and that one, it was on the phone. It
Yeah.
started on the phone, and then, um, let's see, then somewhere it got to the computer. It didn't start video. We didn't start doing video until I started doing it, and that was a little ways into that, because at
Yeah.
first it was just still the audio, and then the producer said, "We can do video if you ever want to do it." I'm like, "Oh my." No, I don't.
No, don't
I
want to
was just
do that.
doing
She
this,
probably didn't want to do the video.
and then I can't remember. He'd said it a few more times, and then finally I was like, well, we can try it. Let's just see. And what I liked was that I noticed so many times on the phone, it's hard to know, like the person you're working with, the interviewing. I would, we'd speak over each other a lot because you can't
Mm,
see them. I thought, and I loved on a video, I can see them. I know when they're about to say something. I'm like, oh, I love that, So that
yeah,
was, so that's how we got into video.
yeah, wow.
There was an advantage to it.
Yeah. Well, you must, all these years later, you must be very grateful to Kevin Moore because Kevin believed in your mother's message and he really put it
Yes.
out there. And as I said, all these years later, because he recorded it in a
Mhm.
professional, great way that he did, all these people now are getting to enjoy it. So it was a tremendous gift that he came into your lives and did what he
Absolutely.
did.
Absolutely. And he's such a sweetheart,
Yeah.
and that I she met him. I don't remember that story how bad, but I remember when I was with her and then we met, it was like they already knew each other. So I'm not sure how they met before that, but he was just this, she treated him like a son. It was just
Yeah.
this mom that was there. And it was very sweet. He just loved her, absolutely loved her.
And
Um,
he's a great interviewer, isn't he? He has a
so
real
good.
knack for not, like not but almost playing the devil's advocate sometimes and really questioning. He's very skillful at what he does. I think he's one of the best around.
He's he is so good. He helped me so much. I don't know if he's aware of it, but he was like, I don't know if he was the first interview I did after mom passed, but he was like, if he wasn't the first, he was the second. But he was so good at, I don't know if I told you this before. I think I did. Whereas like I had the first person I think was somebody that was like, you've got to be your mother, you've got to do this, you've got to, I was like, and that was so weird because I was really having a hard time with my identity already, and now it's like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta know what she knows. I don't know what she knows because she did the sessions, I just know what I know from her, period, where that's right. When you do the work, you know it innately, you know everything about it. But as a peripheral person, I just know what I know, I'm not in her head. And that was the part they were like, they wanted me to have to be her. And I'm like, I can't be that,
Mm,
so that was a struggle. So that on that one I had to kind of figure out a way to do my thing, and I did. But then Kevin was either right before that or right after. I feel like he was right after that, because I was sitting there going, how am I going to do this? How am I
mm,
going to, I don't understand how I'm going to work in this field when everybody wants me to be my mother.
mm.
I don't get it, so it was so beautiful. He came in, and because I already knew him, he has this beautiful, delicate way of, we just talked about mom, we remembered mom, we just,
Mm.
and it was so sweet. I got to, then I guess I think that showed me who I am. He was doing it the way I want. It's like, this is who I am. I'm the person that worked with her all these years, and I know these things, so,
Mm.
and that's what I'd like to share rather than me try to substitute being mom.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I always say to people, no one knows her better than you, and no one probably
Mhm.
knows the material better than you because you helped her, I believe, edit certain books and you were there through the whole process, particularly through the speaking and the training. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
it's so invaluable to people now, even
Mhm.
watching this interview, just hearing these things, people, it means a lot to people, I think.
Yeah. I mean, and it means so much to me whenever we remember, things like that. So that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to contribute in that way, with
Yeah.
what I know, what I can share.
And it's just spreading so incredibly. I mean, like,
Mhm.
I know people like me that studied and I'm a level 2, and now I'm doing, I have no idea when I started I'd be doing anything around media. I mean, you just get all these, just thinking, how would that come into it? I was
Mhm.
just focused on doing sessions every day and all of that. And then social media came, and then it just kind of evolved. And now I'm doing these interviews with you and other people. And it's amazing how you end up doing things that you never expected.
Exactly. Exactly. But you are, but does it feel like work?
No, no, it never does. I always enjoy it so much, and it just, it never ceases to amaze me how many things just open up when you're doing what you're supposed to do. Everything works.
Yes. Yes.
It
And it
just
just keeps opening
works.
up and it just works. Exactly.
It just
Perfectly
works.
said.
And I remember your mum said, and you don't get sick.
No.
Since I've really been in I've given out more energy than I think I ever have in my life. I've got less sleep than I ever have in my life. And I feel more healthy and energized than I
Yeah.
ever have in my life.
Right. Well, because
And
remember, illness and sickness is only a message,
it's a
and it's
message,
usually a
right?
message about you being off course. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's no need for a message. So no
Absolutely.
illness.
And even, even now, because, people are afraid and they're, wearing masks still around, I don't even think about, like, it doesn't even cross my mind. In fact, when I see it, I'm surprised. I think, oh yeah, that's right. Just, it don't do any of the things, because
Right.
I just don't ever contemplate getting sick or being down. Because you're right. When you know that you don't need that message, then you're fine.
Mhm.
And I remember your mum said, she never was sick a day in her life.
I don't recall any. I mean, she might have had a, now that you've said that, definitely once she started on this, she never was. I mean, if
Yeah,
she was,
I
it was,
think that's what she
yeah.
was referring to. This, since
Mhm.
she got the
Mhm.
knowledge, she just never got sick.
Yeah. No, I don't recall her ever being sick.